Welcome to the Handed Down Kitchen, where we bring antique recipes out of the past and back into the kitchen. Over the last few months, we've been introducing you to our collection of 10 antique cookbooks that we use to recreate the antique recipes you find on our channel. Today we'll be showing you our 1910s and First World War era cookbook and telling you as much as we know about it before following this video with 3 recipes from this book. This is a second Dudley book of recipes, which was collected and arranged by Georgina, the Countess of Dudley. Starting with some background, this book was published in the year 1914 by Hutchinson & Co. in London. At the time, the reigning monarch was King George V, who had ascended to the throne 4 years before upon the death of King Edward VII, and the Prime Minister was Herbert Henry Asquith of the Liberal Party. That year, both the King and Prime Minister had the solemn task of announcing Britain's declaration of war on Germany, marking the formal beginning of the First World War, or Great War as it became known. As you will hear later, our authoress, the Countess of Dudley, would herself be very much affected by this war. So let's tell you more about the Countess, as we call her, who was a remarkable woman. She was born Georgina Elizabeth in 1846 to Sir Thomas Moncrieff, 7th Baronet, and his wife Lady Louisa Hay Drummond into the noble clan Moncrieff of Perthshire, Scotland, and was one of 16 children. As she grew, she became recognised as a noted beauty of the Victorian era, and at 19 years old married the 48-year-old William Ward, the 1st Earl of Dudley. It was then that she took on the title of Countess. The Earl of Dudley adored his wife and spoiled her with the very finest jewellery and dresses, but when it came to the running of his estate, she was awarded no responsibilities or involvement at all, despite showing a great deal of interest in it. They went on to have 7 children, 1 daughter and 6 sons. The Earl died of pneumonia in 1885, and the Countess, who lived until 1929, would go on to live more than half of her life as his widow. Upon his death, the Countess threw herself into the running of his estate, which included Dudley Castle, and in fact she demonstrated that she was far more capable of this than her husband had been. Although she was approached endlessly by many suitors well into her later years of life, she never remarried and dedicated all of her time to her family and the several charities that she supported. The Countess helped to run the Mayfair nursing home for disabled officers and actively helped to nurse patients back to health. And she was particularly involved in the British Red Cross and served with the British Red Cross Society both during the Boer War and the First World War. The First World War would deal her a harsh blow. In 1914, the year that this book was published, the now 68-year-old Countess's youngest child, Lieutenant Gerald Ward, was killed in action in the First Battle of Ypres at Zandvoort, aged 36. From that year right up until the end of the war, she worked for 9 hours each day at the convalescent hospital caring for the war wounded. She really was a wonderful woman. At the time this book was written, the Countess was living in her home, Pembroke Lodge, which is right in the middle of London's Richmond Park. She'd always loved parties and her food, and it's therefore no surprise she ended up writing her own cookbook, which I'm sure includes many recipes that would have been given to her by her cooks. And with us now having introduced you to the lady behind the recipes, let's show you more of this book. Condition-wise, although it was published more than 107 years ago as of the date of this video, it's in extraordinarily good condition. The top and bottom of the spine are a little bashed, but it's a very solid book. All of the pages are in good condition. The book begins with this quote from Byron about the home, the first of many quotes throughout. We know the Countess was devoted to her family and home, so it's no surprise she begins with a quote like this, which reads, "'Tis sweet to hear the watchdog's honest bark, bay deep-mouthed welcome as we draw near home. 'Tis sweet to know there is an eye will mark our coming and look brighter when we come." We then get this fantastic signed portrait of the Countess, looking very young for a 68-year-old, separated from the title page, which somewhat confusingly gives the book a different title, a second Dudley book of cookery and other recipes, which I've probably used when referring to the book at some point without realising. Before getting into the recipes, we have the Countess's preface, which says this. The recipes contained in this volume are nothing very new or elaborate, merely what I think to be a useful collection to have at hand, as a sort of memorandum book for the mistress of a household when ordering meals and when the inevitable question arises, what on earth shall I order for luncheon and dinner today? Many of the recipes are very homely and simple, and I think may be useful in small households, showing how cold meat etc. may be used up and turned into appetising dishes, as done in France, and therefore much waste saved. The recipes are interspersed with a selection of quotations, which I hope may be interesting. We then get a photo of her home, Pembroke Lodge, and a note about it. It was from here that she wrote this book. The lodge still stands today. We visited it in 2019 and had a cream tea in its tea rooms, which is open to the public. Then comes the contents, which goes on and on, 17 pages in all. And next, a list of illustrations before coming to our first recipe chapter, soups, starting with what she calls an excellent recipe for split pea soup. We then have a chapter on fish dishes, the most popular type of fish being sole and then whiting. Next is hot poultry and game dishes. A few of the dishes from this chapter have caught our eye, and one of the 3 recipes we'll be sharing with you in the coming weeks will be for fried chicken Pembroke, which we assume is a recipe that either she or her cook developed while cooking with her, as it's been named after her home. Then we have hot meat dishes, that includes particularly a lot of mutton dishes. Next is a chapter on cold dishes, and let's just show you how many of these chapters start, with these red-edged boxes of quotes that sort of relate to the contents of the chapter. There's one here that says, "Hunger is sharper than the sword." This chapter includes things such as turkey or chicken pâté and raised game pie. Then we have savouries. From this chapter we've already made the Countess's recipe for cheese toasts, followed by vegetables and salads, sauces, both sweet and savoury, and then sweet dishes and puddings, all of which are quite simple but look delicious. And this is followed by a chapter on savoury rice and macaroni dishes. Then we have a whole chapter on different ways of cooking venison. Her interest in venison makes sense. Richmond Park, which surrounds Pembroke Lodge, has been a deer park since the 17th century. You've got all sorts of venison recipes here, from cutlets to whole roasted haunches of venison. Then is egg and breakfast dishes, simple recipes which we've tried a few of and are really lovely. And this is followed by tea cakes, etc., which starts with a recipe for egg sandwiches between toast for tea and ends with French tea biscuits. Then we have a chapter on householder and miscellaneous tips, things like how to roast Spanish chestnuts, how to take ink stains out of mahogany, and how to turn hydrangeas blue. And our final chapter is on beverages, with all sorts of drinks, from Turkish coffee, which we'll be showing you how to make according to one of the 2 recipes in here, to sloe gin and chamomile tea. After this, the book finishes with a few more pages of quotes selected by the Countess. This one is one of my favourites. It's a poem by Aaron Hill about dealing with difficult people. It goes, "Tender-handed stroke a nettle, and it stings you for your pains. Grasp it like a lad of metal, and it soft as silk remains. So it is with these fair creatures, use them kindly, they rebel. But be rough as nutmeg graters, and the rogues obey you well." So far, the recipes that we've already tried and tested and filmed from this book are this chocolate cake, cheese toasts, Sledmere gingerbread, and steak and kidney pie. In our next 3 videos, we'll be showing you how we brought 3 more recipes from this book back to life, including Turkish coffee, fried chicken Pembroke, and one of the desserts that we haven't quite made up our mind on yet. In the meantime, you can check out the recipes we've already tried from this cookbook on our channel. We hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please leave us a like, and if you'd like to see more about our collection of antique cookbooks and watch us recreate the recipes from them, be sure to subscribe to our channel.